What's going on, people? Welcome back to the United Stand. My name is Maud and I have another 2 p.m. show for you. But first of all, let me know how you guys are doing in the chat. It's been a minute since I've spoken to you guys, so I really want to know how you're feeling. International break. There's been some crazy games on this week. I saw Scott McTominay score an overhead kick yesterday. Or was it 2 days ago? I can't remember. I think it was yesterday. I said, where did that come from? Scott McTominay scoring big goals. I've seen Højlund scoring some good goals. Some of the United players, Bruno Fernandes scored a hat-trick the other day. Like, I don't know what's going on in the air, but international breaks actually looking a bit interesting. But anyway, like I said, let me know how you're feeling. Did your country qualify? Let me know that as well. Did your country qualify for the World Cup? Because we've got some interesting news on some United players. But mainly on Rúben Amorim. Rúben Amorim I spoke a lot. I said a few things about Jim Ratcliffe. He said a few things about the academy, certain plays, etc. So we're going to go through all of that. It feels like a little bit like a press conference almost. They might have been speaking. But some really interesting quotes coming out. Also some stuff about Ollie. One of United's former colleagues spoke a little bit about Ollie's managerial tactics, which I think was really, really insightful and interesting in his time at United. And lastly, Bruno Guimarães, not Bruno Fernandes, but Bruno Guimarães, the Newcastle midfielder, had a few things to say about Casemiro, which again, I think it'll be really, really interesting what happens with Casemiro, especially after the season ends and also after the World Cup, because he's probably going to be there. And right now, it's looking like he might be there might be a new contract on the table for 1 more year. You never know. So I think that the quotes that came out about him are really interesting. So we are going to go through that. And lastly, if we have a little bit more time in the show, then we will talk about the next run of games that are going to come up for United and see how we can do. But like I said, let me know how you guys are doing. Some people from Norway in the chat, some from South Africa's going to the World Cup. Someone said bring on 3 months without international break. You know what? I don't mind it. I don't mind that. We've had so many so far this season. But let's get straight into the show. So let's talk about Rúben Amorim's quote. So the first quotes that have come out, he's talking a little bit about obviously his recent run of form and how the games are going, and he says we're playing better because we have more confidence, and that comes with results. It's not a surprise to me if we improve, but we're far from perfection, and the team that can win every match. There's a lot to do, but as I've said for several months, the formation was never the problem. It's a question of dynamics, confidence, and way of playing. He also says, if we look at the matches where we've had difficulties this season, it wasn't a question of formation, but a lack of intensity. And you have to be perfect in this championship to win a lot of matches. Now, that's the first thing that he's spoken about. And look, the points that I want to touch on is, he obviously mentions it's not formation, it's how we play. Now, the reason why I want to touch on that is a lot of the conversations around Rúben Amorim's formation, they weren't necessarily talking about the fact that a 3-4-3 can never work. Because a lot of people admitted, look, Glasner at Crystal Palace was playing with a 3-4-3, or Xabi Alonso has played with a 3-4-3 at Leverkusen. The other managers in the past, like Conte, have played with a 3-4-3. I know Van Gaal used to love a 3-4-3. I don't think the fact that we were playing with that formation was ever the main problem. A lot of the problems came from, as he said, the way how it was being implemented into the team. And there has been slight changes. I think a lot of people have realised that and noticed that the way we are playing, we don't play out from the back as much. A lot of the time we are going very direct to whether it's Sesko or whoever's up front. We do play a lot more direct. And that midfield does seem to be a little bit more compact compared to what it used to be. I mean, we used to get absolutely ran through the midfield. I mean, one player could literally take the ball and run through both of our midfielders, and it will look like there's no one there at all. But now we seem to have a bit more players in there to cover up space, and he has adapted the way how he's implemented this formation. And it is, I mean, look, the last 5 results anyway, you can see that there has been a change in the way we play, and it is looking better. It is looking more positive. So you have to give him a little bit of credit for that. You got to give him credit because he is right in the sense of maybe it wasn't the actual lineup and how we are standing on the pitch, exactly, 3 players at the back and then 4 players in the middle of the pitch. No, that might not have been the problem, but the way how he was implementing it, and like you said, dynamics and confidence. But one little concern that I would say is, he does mention right at the start, we are playing because we have more confidence, and that comes with results, and that is always going to be the factor in football. But I really want to see this team be able to play and win matches where the confidence isn't there. You know, when the confidence isn't there and we might be, losing a game or it might be a game where we shouldn't be winning or these kind of games that are really, really difficult, can we overcome those hurdles and get results? Because if we're just relying on confidence, I mean, confidence comes and goes throughout the season. Some players are really confident all the time. It's just 10 out of 10 confidence every single game. But some players, you need to work on that. Some players only play well if they're at their highest level of confidence. We've seen it with, players like, in the past, Rashford, we saw it with players like Dalot. We've seen it with players like, I think a player like Dorgu, I think he plays way better when he's confident. When he doesn't have as much confidence, I don't think he plays as well. Mainu, another player that I think plays way better with a lot more confidence. Ugarte. But these kinds of players, and not just them to be fair, but the team in general, I think we need to find ways to still get results, even if we aren't at our full top of the 10-10 top tier confidence on the pitch. I think that's the next kind of stage that Amorim needs to kind of work on with developing the mentality of these players. And I think that will take us very far this season, because at the end of the day, I've always said, look, it's a results-based business. People are going to judge Amorim based on whether he's getting 3 points, 1 point, or no points. That's how the media works. That's how people work. That's how fans work. So at the end of the day, he needs to find a way to get as many results as possible in the best way possible as well. And the last thing that I do want to touch on in terms of that quote there is, he does kind of allude to the fact that, in the second part of the quote, he says, if we look at the matches where we had difficulties this season, it wasn't a question of formation, but a lack of intensity. Now, again, that is probably true. There are games that we have lost where we could have performed a lot better, and none of our players, well, not none of them, but the majority of our players haven't performed to the standards that we expect them to. But my only thing with Amorim is, he doesn't seem to take blame in a lot of situations. And not to say that the players are completely scot-free and they should just be, we should put all the blame on one side. No, there should be a balance. I feel like as a manager, you should be able to go into a press conference or have an interview or whatever it is and be able to say, you know what, yes, there was a lack of intensity, but also on my side, I could have done this better. I could have done A, B, C better. Maybe I could have set up better. Maybe I could have played in this particular style of play or with this tactic, or maybe I could have told the players to do this, but it just always seemed like he tries to, I don't want to say shed the blame, but he always puts the excuses on the way the players are playing on the pitch, almost to say that, like, I've done my job, it's all up to them. And if we lose, it's not on me, it's all on the players. And I feel like that going forward in the future can be a bit detrimental, because you don't want your players to always feel like they're in the wrong in every single situation. You want to be able to, as a leader, as a manager of the club, well, not pretty much, he is a manager of the club, you do want to be able to take accountability for certain results and certain things. So I think with Amorim, he doesn't seem to like taking accountability in a lot of stuff. He seems to always kind of put the blame on particular players or just the team in general, how they go out there. But anyway, look, there's so much more that he spoke about. We're going to move on. He does mention talking his first year at United, and he says, I've learned a lot. I think I'm a better manager now. I'm ready for the future, and I'm ready for the present. It was a really tough journey, but now I can see that was necessary. I think we can all agree that it was a really difficult journey. And, if I'm comparing Amorim right now compared to Amorim at the start, or maybe even just the middle or the end of last season, whatever it is, he has definitely improved. I think everyone can agree with that, but there is, like you said, there is a lot to learn. There's a lot going forward that we still need to work on. Now, the next part I think is the part I really want to touch on the most, and he talks a lot about young players and the youth team. Now, for me, I've had conversations with people about, especially United fans, about United's youth system and our academy. And look, when we talk about DNA of clubs, different clubs have different, ways of showing what makes the club them, what makes United, or what makes Liverpool, or Arsenal, Chelsea. And with United, I feel like our youth, our academy is what makes us. It's what makes people respect us almost, in a sense of, you look at the 90s, and one of the biggest things that was the biggest talking points of United was, can United win with a bunch of academy players? Can United win with this class of 92? And we managed to do it, and that was one of the main reasons why our academy was looked at so fondly. You look at the 60s with the Busby Babes, and even like George Best and Bobby Charlton and all these guys, these academy players. that was what we used and what we utilized to go and be successful and win the league and win the European Cup and all these kind of things. Our academy has been almost our pride. It's been what we've been able to push out there and say, this is what makes United United. Now, the reason why I'm touching on that is, I feel like of recent, especially the last year or so, our academy hasn't been utilised in the best possible way. The reason why I say that is, you look at the amount of academy players that we have in the team right now. I mean, if it wasn't for Jack Fletcher literally being put on the bench for pretty much no reason, he wasn't going to get any minutes. But if it wasn't for Jack Fletcher being on the bench, we would have lost our record of having an academy player in the squad for the last 88 years. That's over 4,000 matches, consecutive matches that we've had an academy player in the squad. And if it wasn't for Jack Fletcher, who's never played a minute for Manchester United, if it wasn't for him being on the bench, that record would have gone. Now, I don't think that's a coincidence. I think that's a result of us not, I say us, but Amorim and maybe Ineos as well, not prioritising almost and taking, like I said, taking that pride and almost focusing on building our academy to the point where we have players that can walk into the team. I mean, right now we look at our academy players that are in the team. You've got Kobbie Mainoo, barely gets any minutes. He's thinking about going on loan in January, which means he won't even be here. He could not be here for the next, 4 or 5 months until the end of the season. Then you've got, obviously the players that have gone already. Garnacho's obviously gone, Rashford's already gone, so they're not even in the team anymore. We're looking at Aiden Heaven doesn't really count as an academy player. We bought him for £1 million off Arsenal, never played in the academy. Chido doesn't get any minutes. He's not going to get any minutes this season. He's still in the academy. There isn't really anybody else. I mean, the rest of the guys have gone on loan. You look, Collier's gone on loan, Harry Yamas has gone on loan, Ethan Wheatley's gone on loan. We've got Fredrickson, I guess, but there isn't that many academy players in our team that even have an opportunity to get into, to get on the pitch. Never mind to start, forget starting, to even just get on the pitch for 5-10 minutes. And I believe, look, yes, we obviously want to play the players that deserve to play. It's not all about just forcing players into the team. That's not the point I'm trying to make. But we should be able to have an academy or a system of development in our youth team where the players are ready to be put into the team. That should be the method. And if we haven't got that, then there's something that's gone wrong. Something, in my opinion, that has gone wrong, or maybe there's been a lack of focus in that department, in my opinion. And like I said, it's not about forcing players into the team, forcing academy players into the team just because they're an academy player. But we should be having, like I said, a system, some kind of method of, okay, these players are developing. We should be sending this guy out on loan and this guy out on loan, and then he should be working his way into the team and maybe getting a couple of minutes here and there. But right now, genuinely, it looks like if we don't force an academy player onto the bench, we don't have anyone who's even ready to be there. And I think that's a problem, especially considering how well our academy's done in recent years. The under-18 team, I think a couple of years ago, was 1 game away from pretty much going unbeaten the whole season. That's a very good team. That's a very good record. We've got one of the top academies in the country. So how come it's not translating into the first team? That's my question. Now, Amorim has spoken about it, so I want to read out some of the things that he said. And he said, first of all, it is an honour to play for Manchester United. And sometimes some young players take that for granted. I think it's going to be interesting. Let me know in the comments, who do you think he's talking about when he's saying these things? Because he's not just saying it blindly. He's got a couple of players in his mind that he's thinking about. He says, next, you have to look at the physical aspect because it's important for playing in the Premier League. Then you have to help kids manage media attention. You have to be very careful when a young player plays a match, not to overhype it. That's been a problem in the past. Finally, talent and work ethic. That's what we look for in our players. Very, very interesting quotes. Now, I mean, I don't want to over-analyze and say he's definitely talking about this player, definitely talking about that player. But I think it is important when he mentions one physical aspect, because we've heard him say that about Mainoo before. That's not just a speculation. He has mentioned about the physical aspect of Mainoo's game and if he can do that. But also helping the kids manage media attention. I think that is super, super important when it comes to managing a club the size of Manchester United. If you play for United, your profile, your public image is 100 times bigger than any other club. Let's be honest, any other club. Obviously, yes, you have other big clubs here and there and whatnot, but playing for United at a different level. the ability to be scrutinised is 10 times more because everyone is watching United games and everyone's looking at United to see what's going on. So if you're a young player in the team, it's very, very easy for people to criticise you, and let me say overly criticise you based on what you do. And I think it is important for the manager and for the club in general to manage that, to be able to help our young players to deal with that in the best way, because these are young players, they are kids at the end of the day, they're teenagers. If you can't help these teenagers to be able to manage thousands of people criticising them, or even thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, millions of people, even giving them praise and not letting it get to their head, all you're going to do is run these players out of form or run these players out of the club because they're not going to be able to handle the pressure that comes with playing for United. Now, I think one player that actually did happen to, I think Garnacho. I think Garnacho, the media attention that he got in such a small amount of time, literally from that overhead kick, let's be honest, that overhead kick changed Garnacho's life. It did, let's be very honest. That overhead kick absolutely, it took his personal image, like I said, his name, everything about him from, let's just say, level 3 to level 10. He went from being just a young, raw, high, what's the word? High potential player to being Puskas Award, I think he was the top 3 or top 5 in the Young Player of the Year and the Ballon d'Or Awards. Like, he took his whole brand, it elevated it to the actual moon. And I think that kind of, maybe a little bit, it got to his head a bit. And I think that's kind of where his downfall began. Now, I think Amorim and the coaching staff and the team in general have to look at that example and say, we don't want that to happen again. We don't want a situation where we've got players who think that they are bigger than the manager or think that they know more than the manager, and players who are on social media and tweeting things and talking out in the media, and we don't want that to happen again. So we have to find a way to avoid that from happening. But yeah, I think it is important that, like I said before, the young players are managed in the best way. Now, he does say a lot more stuff on the academy. I'm going to read through it quickly, and I'm going to go on to the next topic. So he says, when I arrived, there were so many matches that it was hard to prepare for everything, to understand everything around it, to understand what the plan is for each young player, to talk with the coaches. That's what we're doing now, and I appreciate that it's part of a job. So he does admit that, like, when he arrived, there was so much going on, he couldn't really focus on the academy. And maybe that's part of the reason why, there hasn't been as many academy players come through the team over, let's say, the last year or so and actually cement themselves as a player in this squad. And he says, there are players who know what it means to play for this badge, and there are players who maybe aren't good enough to play for Man United and who can bring in money to offset the PSR and buy different players. So look, Amorim is thinking about PSR. Some of these young players that we have in the team, they're not all gonna be here for the foreseeable future. Some of them, he is looking at them saying, look, we can get a bit of money for him. It is gonna help us in our transfer strategy. They have to go. He then says the future of our club will be the academy, because if you look at the previous years, the best periods were with academy players, and that's facts. That's facts. So there is a balance there. There is balance of like you said, like you mentioned, some players can go for PSR, some players we can get a bit of money from, but also at least he appreciates and understands, look, the best periods were with our academy players, and the future of the club is our academy. So look, that's what Amorim has to say about the academy. And the last thing that he does mention before we move on to the next topic is he speaks on Sir Jim Ratcliffe's public interview, where Sir Jim obviously backed him and showed him a little bit of faith. And he says, if you remember, Sir Jim gave that interview. If you remember, when Sir Jim gave that interview, that settled down a lot. The noise around the club changed completely, and that was really important for the team. His words were a huge impact, not on the way I do things, but the way people see. So look, there is some kind of mutual respect there between the manager and obviously Sir Jim Ratcliffe, and you do need that, because at the end of the day, once there's friction between the owners and the manager, it's a done deal. You may as well start looking for a new job, because I've always thought that, like, when it gets to the point where it's, you've got 1 game left, 3 games left, 5 games left, and you're just clinging on, at that point, you may as well just forget about it because results can change at any point, you know, and if the owner's not saying to the manager, we're backing you 100%, we're backing you in whatever you need to do, then there really isn't any point in that manager still being here. So for Amorim, I think it is big that Sir Jim is trusting him and does want him to be the manager for the foreseeable future going forward. But I also feel like with Sir Jim Ratcliffe, I don't think any of us want to accept that they would even have made a mistake. Not saying that they have made a mistake in signing in bringing in Rúben Amorim, but I don't think that any of us want to say or would want to come out and make it seem that like they've made any mistakes. They're supposed to be best in class. They're supposed to be showing excellence in everything they do. If they come out and say we made a mistake, that's why we sacked Rúben Amorim, it's almost like, well, what's the difference between what you're doing and what Glazers have done? Glazers have made multiple mistakes and sacked multiple managers. Now you've just done the exact same thing. How can the fan base trust you knowing that you've now made the exact same mistake that the previous owners, well, they're still here, but Glazers have made? So, yeah, I think that's probably one of the reasons why Sir Jim Ratcliffe is putting all of his faith in Amorim. I think he really desperately wants Amorim to work, and yeah, for him to actually turn things around. But look, that's all the Rúben Amorim quotes. Like I said before, let me know in the comments what you think in the chat, what you think about that. There are some super chats that have come in, so make sure you're sending in your super chats so I can read them out. And any topic you want to discuss, if you bring it in a super chat, we're going to discuss it. That's how the show works. So make sure you're sending them in and we could talk about it. So a super chat here from Johnny Grender says, 100% he needs to blame the players. They've sacked enough managers over the last 10 years. This is not yet his squad. Look, I've never really understood how people can still use that argument of the same players have sacked managers over 10 years. There's been one player in this team that's been here for 10 years, and that's Luke Shaw. One player. Other than that, the next longest player that we've had, I think, is Bruno. I think Bruno's the only player that's been here for the next longest, and he came in 2020, which was what, 5 years ago. These players haven't been under every manager. Most of the players that start, in fact, have been here for the last 2 years, if that. Let's look at the starting 11 right now. Lamens just came. Yoro just came. De Ligt came what, a year and a half ago, whatever it is. Who else is there? Like I said, Luke Shaw's been here for 10 years, which we can all admit. I say that every single week. Then you've got Dorgu, just came. Ahmad, he didn't just come, but Ahmad's just been starting for like the last year and a half. He wasn't starting on the Ten Hag. He only really started the end of Ten Hag's period and the start of Amorim's period. So Ahmad, in my opinion, has just came realistically. You look at the midfield, Casemiro and Bruno. Like I said, you can say yes, they are two players that have been here for a considerable amount of time. But unless you're trying to tell me that you want them both to go, in my opinion, I don't think that they've both done that poorly for me to say that they've both been a big problem. And then you look at the front three and they're all new players. So for me, this whole argument of the players have sacked all these managers over the years, they haven't. Most of them haven't even been here for that long. So I think that's just a poor argument to use about players and how they've sacked the managers. That argument should be dead by now. But yeah, I think in general, like I said before, blame does need to be put on both sides, the players and the manager. But I think when it's one-sided and it's like, okay, as a manager, you're only going to blame the players and, oh, this player didn't do this and this player didn't do that and the players need to do this, the players need to do that. It almost just feels like you're scapegoating yourself. You're almost saying like, I'm not at fault. It's not me, it's them. And I feel like as a manager, as a team, the blame should be shared out. It should be yes, they've not done their part, but I've also not done my part as well. And as a team, as a unit, as a club, we all need to improve and we all need to do better for the club to succeed. But I think when you're just saying all the time, yeah, it wasn't the formation, it's not the system, everything I've done is right, I think it's just the way the players are playing, you're almost just kind of throwing them under the bus a little bit. That's my opinion anyway, but let me know your opinion. But yeah, going forward though, like I said, make sure in your super chats and I'm going to read them out and let me know your opinion on everything that's going on. But look, before I move on to the next part of the conversation, next part of the show, I do want to give a quick shout out for the United Christmas jumpers. Look, the Christmas jumpers they're out now, right? They're out now. So I think you can get them. The link will be in the description. These Christmas jumpers here, it is getting cold. I'll be honest, it is freezing in Manchester. All of you guys that are living in, I don't know, South Africa and all these other places, you don't understand. Yeah, it is cold. It is like 3 degrees, sometimes like 1 degree. So these Christmas jumpers are coming in handy, so make sure you get them. The link is in the description. And yeah, cop your Christmas jumpers. They're available now, and yeah, they're there for you to go and buy. Now, also, quick shout out for the rest of the shows that are coming out this week on Friday. In fact, let me do tomorrow, Thursday, 2 p.m. There is Ben Jacobs is going to be here with Beth. You guys love the Ben Jacobs shows. And yeah, Ben Jacobs will be here talking to Beth, all the transfers, all the news that's going to be coming out, anything to do like Anderson, Beleba, Semenyo. There's also some there's like a youngster that's being looked at. Make sure you check out the show tomorrow, and Ben Jacobs will be answering all of those questions for you guys at 2 p.m. on the United Stand. Not only that, but on Friday, That's Football. You guys know what That's Football is, and if you don't know, it is kind of like the sister channel to United Stand, and it's all things football. Mark puts on videos every single day. Yeah, and he also does watch-alongs. And on Friday, there'll be not only a watch-along, but there'll be a live game from Bundesliga. You can watch the actual live game with Mark, do this watch-along at 7:15. The stream starts, and it'll be Mainz versus Hoffenheim. So if you want to watch some Bundesliga football, go and check that out on Friday. 7:15 was the stream start time, 7:30 kickoff, and Mark will be doing a watch-along with the live game, so check that out. Now Saturday, there will also be another watch along on That's Football. Burnley versus Chelsea, 12:30 kickoff, and 5:30 Newcastle versus Man City. Very, very good games. And lastly on Sunday, That's Football, big game, North London derby, Arsenal versus Spurs, 4:30 kickoff. I've got Spurs taking it because I just don't like Arsenal. I'll be honest, I don't want Arsenal to win. Any opportunity Arsenal lose, I don't mind. But yeah, I'm taking Spurs in that game. Even though Arsenal will probably win, let's be honest, it's like Spurs are just bottle jobs, aren't they? But the 4:30 kickoff, watch along on That's Football with Mark, so make sure you are checking that out. But look, let's move on to the next thing I do want to talk about quickly. Is there was some quotes from Bruno Guimarães. Anyone who doesn't know who that is, he watches Premier League football. He plays for Newcastle. Great player, serious midfielder. Probably kind of player that we kind of need in our team, to be fair. But he's Brazilian, and he had some quotes on Casemiro, and I think it's really interesting when it comes to Casemiro's future at the club, because everyone seems to have a lot of good things to say about him, and he is playing very, very well. I've said before, I think he is our most underrated player this season. I think the performances that Casemiro has put in for us, they're going under the radar because, one, he never plays 90 minutes because he either gets a yellow card or he just has to come off for whatever reason. But two, sometimes when you're not a new signing, you're not getting a goal, you're not getting the assists, you're not putting in bad performances, but you're not putting in man of the match performances, you almost just go under the radar. And it's like, he plays all these games and we don't even talk about him because he's just doing his job and he's just doing it very well. And I think Casemiro, and for that reason, he is our most underrated player. But also the fact that he might not be here next year, which is crazy to say that a player who's actually been one of our better players this season might not even be a player for us going into next season. Now, whether or not you want him to be here, or you think he's too old, or you think his contracts, his wage is too high and he needs to drop his wage, I think it's interesting what people have to say about him. So Bruno Guimarães has said his background, his titles, he is a complete player. His career speaks for itself. He's in one of my first interviews with the national team in 2020 when I arrived, they asked if I was inspired by anyone in the midfield, and I said his name, Casemiro. He's also an idol there for everything he's done, especially at Real Madrid, the 5 Champions League titles, a guy that everyone who plays in Brazil's midfield talks about. Casemiro is a guy we have to follow, so I think it's a bit of everything. He's a leader. So that is very, very positive words about Casemiro, very, very strong words about Casemiro from a very, very good player, top player in the Premier League. One of the best, in my opinion. Look, at his best, to be fair, I don't think Bruno Guimarães is even one of those players that's inconsistent. I think he's a very consistent player anyway, but I think there are also some very good midfielders in the Premier League, but he's up there, in my opinion. He is up there, one of the top midfielders, or top DMs anyway, in the Premier League. And for him to have these words about Casemiro, him to not only just say that he looks up to him, but also right now, he is one of a top player that he's happy to play with, and like I said, he respects a lot. I think that goes a long way. And I'm not surprised about that. Not just the fact that he's Brazilian, but I think a lot of players, even at United, look up to Casemiro for what he's done in general, you know, at Real Madrid, the 5 Champions League titles. But he mentioned at the end, he's a leader. And we do need leaders in this team. We don't have a lot of them, if we're being honest. And if he was to end up leaving, you know, let's say Bruno was to get a contract and end up leaving, or Luke Shaw was to end up, well, Luke Shaw's not necessarily one of the leaders, but let's just say Martinez gets injured or whatnot. There aren't that many leaders in the team, and I think Casemiro is a player who could play that role in a squad. Now, £350,000 a week is a lot of money. I don't know if we can continue to afford him, but look, if he is willing to take a pay cut and he's willing to accept that role as being a leader, you know, playing potential, you know, games here and there. Hopefully we will be in Europe, so we will have more games to play, and he can just play the minutes that's needed to play for him to stay fully fit and fully focused every time he plays. I think he can be a huge asset for us next season as we develop more and more players to become leaders in the team. So yeah, I mean, let me know, do you think Casemiro should stay one more year and take on that leadership role at the club? But look, that is the end of the show. There is one more super chat from Johnny Grender as well. He says, the dressing room mentality has been poor for those 10 years. You can remove a toxic player, but the mentality they help to create still lingers. Yes and no. I think that's just something that people use to kind of almost put the blame on the players that have gone. I think the negativity that people always put on older players or past players, sometimes, I'll be honest, sometimes I don't even believe it. I'll be honest, because sometimes people just say it about players they don't like. Like, I've heard loads of people say that Pogba brought a negative energy to the dressing room, but whenever I hear players who played with Pogba talk about him, they always have positive things to say. I've heard the same thing about Rashford. Rashford ruined the dressing room, but then you hear players who played with him talk about him, and they always have positive things to say. I've heard the same thing about Bruno, about the dressing room, and about how, you know, not even just the dressing room, but how he treats players on the pitch. And Bruno, he's always complaining about players and all this kind of stuff. But every time I hear players talk about Bruno, they always have positive things to say. So for me, I'm going to listen to the players who are playing with him, and even the managers. Whenever I've heard ex-managers talk about these so-called toxic players in the club, they always have positive things to say. So yes, there are some players that have had negative impacts on the team. I'm not denying that there are players who have done that. But to say that, like, even though after the players have gone, the negative energy that they brought is still there around the club, like, it's not some odor, you know what I mean? It's not like it's a smell that just hovers around the club. No, like, when new players come in, when new managers come in, chemistry changes, energy changes in the club. Amorim has brought some kind of new positive energy. I remember when Oli came, he brought a whole new positive energy to the club. If these kind of things change, and they can change very quickly, especially depending on, like I said, the kind of players that do come to the club. So for me, when I look at the team right now, I sense a positive vibe to the club. I see loads of videos of like Mbumo and De Ligt and Cunha and all these guys, and they always seem to be enjoying their time at the club right now. They always seem to be happy, and they seem to be motivated, and it seems to be positive vibes. I mean, I saw a story come out recently, and I can't remember exactly which player said it. It might have been Dorgu or Dallo, but they mentioned about how everyone in the club right now, it almost seems like they're all friends. It's a friendship group now. It's not just a bunch of guys who are just teammates. There is that friendship group and that team, that positive chemistry in the team at the club right now. So this whole thing about, yeah, this guy left but his negative energy still there, I don't really hear it, in my opinion. There just seems to be a bit more of a positive energy at the club right now, which is what we need and is what we want. So yeah, look, that's the end of the show. I mean, thank you guys for listening. Like I said, make sure you're grabbing your Christmas jumpers. Like I said, there's one right here. It kind of matches what I'm wearing right now, to be fair, but this nice little blue jumper. Make sure you're grabbing your Christmas jumper. The link will be in the description. Don't forget to grab one of those. And like I said, there will be shows going out throughout the week. That's football on Friday. Huge Bundesliga game, and you can watch that game live. And obviously, don't forget, on Monday, United are back in action, playing Everton. 8 p.m. kickoff. I can't remember the last time we had an 8 p.m. kickoff on a Monday. We rarely get these kind of games, but I guess that's what happens when you're not playing in European football anymore. So we will be back on Monday, so make sure you're checking out the Countdown to Kickoff, which will be live at 6 o'clock on Monday. And then obviously the watch along for Mark will be live at 7:30, and that will run all the way to the end of the game. And then we will have a fans forum after the game, so make sure you are checking out all the content that's coming out on the match day. But look, thank you guys for listening and watching, and I'll see you on the next one.